Every once in a while, a topic comes up in the news that I feel like I need to talk about. And even though I try to stay away from drama and politics, about once a month, I do this to myself, and then I get horribly depressed because of the backlash, and I know there's going to be a backlash about this one, but every once in a while, it's so important to me, I have to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about this one, and you can get really mad at me, and I'll just deal with it. And fair warning, for those of you who don't like my fence setting, I'm going to straddle the fence really hard on this topic and show both sides of the fence. But I promise you by the end of the video, I'm going to hop off to one side. And then probably the other for a little bit, because this is a nuanced thing and I have a nuanced position on this. So if you've seen the Guardians of the Galaxy's movies 1 and 2, they were directed by a director by the name of James Gunn. And he was on board to direct the third movie, at least that's what he tweeted and said, that he would be doing the third movie. And as of today, right in the middle of San Diego Comic-Con, they fired him from the third movie. He will not be doing the next Guardian of the Galaxies, and he probably won't be doing anything with Disney moving forward. And this firing stems from some tweets that have surfaced and have been making the rounds recently about some of the most just disgusting stuff I've ever heard. I would show you the tweets here, but they are so offensive that this video could get flagged. I would link to them down below, but I think you should find them on your own term. But we're talking about some really, really disgusting stuff. It was meant as jokes. It was clearly jokes. It's clearly not something I hope that he would ever participate in, or really anybody would ever participate in. But it was some really, really disgusting stuff. And he tweeted that stuff not recently, not in the last few years, not since he got hired by Disney. He tweeted it about 10 or 11 years ago. Now, if I can hop off the fence here for a second, I want to say I grew up loving dark humor, shock humor. I listened to Lisa Lampanelli in the 2000s, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Sam Kinison, and Drew Dice Clay, some of the most offensive comedians you can imagine. I love that type of humor. Sometimes I tell jokes like that in real life. Heck, you can even find compilations where I said stupid jokes, very, very dark, disgusting jokes on Twitch as well. It's my sense of humor. And even then, with what the stuff he was tweeting, I did not find it to be funny, in or out of the context. It just seemed shocking for shocking's sake, but that kind of makes sense with the position that James Gunn was in his life when he was making those tweets 11 years ago. And the reason I say that is if you look at James Gunn's directorial history, if you look at his Twitter history, you look at anything he's ever done, you know that he worked for Troma Films. He directed Tromeo and Juliet. He made a dark comedy called Super. He does some dark stuff, some weird stuff, some creepy stuff. These tweets are much darker and much creepier than anything that you would find in his mainstream stuff, but clearly he has a history of embracing and enjoying dark humor 10, 15, 20 years ago. 1996 is when he did Tromeo and Juliet, working with Troma Films. And if you're familiar with Troma Films, you'll know that is some of the lowest grade, common denominator, offensive stuff out there. It's built just purely to be offensive and entertaining through its offensiveness. And here's the thing. Disney has the right to fire whoever they want. They can work with whoever they want. But they knew about those tweets. They hired James Gunn several years after he made those tweets to create Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. Certainly they vetted him. Disney vets everybody. They vet the people who stand around in costumes at Disneyland. So they knew those tweets existed, and they were okay with it when they hired James Gunn and let him make 2 blockbuster films. They were absolutely aware. And the reason we know that they had to be aware, the reason I believe it beyond the shadow of a doubt, and I will not listen to an argument otherwise, is because just before he got announced as the director for Guardians of the Galaxy, he actually addressed all of those old tweets. He actually apologized for them. He explained that that was his old sense of humor, that he'd outgrown it. He no longer thinks that way, no longer does that thing. He put those things into context, and Disney was okay with that, and the world seemed to be okay with it, and then a few months later, they announced them for Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Clearly that was part of the vetting process. And if you're curious as to why these tweets are now resurfacing, according to Fox News, they were posted and started circulating again because James Gunn is an outspoken critic of President Donald Trump, and the effort was done as an effort to knock him down a few pegs, and they actually toppled the guy entirely. And here's where I hop off the fence a little bit and really offend some people, and I'm sorry for those of you who are going to take offense at this, but I do believe what I'm about to say. This is the flip side of the Me Too movement, which has relatively been a very, very good movement, exposing some very, very bad people. But occasionally, people you trust, people you like, people you have forgiven, they're going to get this done to them occasionally too. This is part of outrage culture. This is part of social progression. This is part of the movement. Once you put those weapons into place, once you put those tools into place, occasionally people you like and people you care about are going to get battered to death by those tools as well. It's probably worth it to take people like Harvey Weinstein out, though, in my opinion, but your mileage may vary on that. And you know me, I follow all kinds of people on social media, people on the very far left, people on the very far right. I like to have my opinions and my ideas challenged. And when something like this happens, I like to hear a wide variety of opinions because it helps me form my own opinions so that I can share them with you. But the one thing I'm most confused about is a lot of people on the far left seem to be upset about this or confused by this. They don't understand why this could happen to James Gunn or how it's happening to James. But this is the world we've built. This is the world we've created. We have fully weaponized social media. We have fully weaponized outrage culture. And of course, this is going to happen from time to time. Of course, the same weapon that can kill a Donald Trump supporter can kill a Hillary Clinton supporter. A weapon is a weapon is a weapon. I believe it would be very hypocritical of me right here to lay into James Gunn for those tweets, because even in just the last 6 months, if you look at some of my stream archives, I have said and done some really dark stuff, some really offensive stuff. I've made a bunch of mistakes, and that's just in the last 6 months. If you look at my lifelong history, 10, 12, 15 years ago, some of the stuff I've done, I'm going to carry with me in the back of my mind. I'm going to carry the guilt of that with me to my grave. If I live to be 100, I'm going to be miserable, and I'm going to regret that stuff. And I want to be forgiving of just about anybody I can. My own family, my friends, myself included, and of course, James Gunn. It's not going to keep me from celebrating the two wonderful movies that he made in Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. The next movie he makes, I will probably watch it. I've never seen Super, but I might end up renting that tonight just because I've never seen it. And I love Rainn Wilson, so I didn't know that movie existed, but I will probably go watch it now. And it's not going to bother me that James Gunn is not a great person, because I try to separate the art from the artist. I try to separate the good from the bad when it comes to people. I probably do that to a fault. I'm fairly certain I do that to a fault. But at least I am consistent with my weak-willed, fence-sitting behavior. At least I'm always like this. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. There are very, very few people that have crossed my line. I can count them on one hand, which is good because my other arm is still broken, so it's kind of hard to use this hand. But I've always believed that the worst of us can be redeemed, that the worst of us should be given a chance to be forgiven and to make up for the damage that they have done. So it's very, very easy for me to forgive James Gunn, because he's got a track record of a decade of doing better. And even when he was making those tweets, he wasn't a particularly bad person. He was still doing a lot of good things. And I'll quote Doctor Who here from an episode about Van Gogh, in which he says that life is a pile of good things and a pile of bad things. And the pile of good things do not necessarily wipe away the bad, but the bad things don't necessarily negate the good. And every person's like that. Every person's a pile of good things and bad things. And when I look at James Gunn, I see somebody who's done a lot more good than bad, even though those tweets are really hard to reconcile. Don't know where that stuff came from. Pretty crazy stuff. But you have to realize that this is the world we've created. If you're going to play pure hardball with people on the left, people are going to play pure hardball with people on the right, and vice versa. This is how the system works. Anger begets anger. Outrage begets outrage. This is the world we live in now. This is the world we've created, and now we have to lie in this bed because this is the bed we've made. And as someone with plenty of skeletons in his closet, obviously I prefer my way of doing things. I prefer forgiveness. I prefer acceptance. I prefer letting things go. I prefer all of that stuff. I prefer giving a chance to people to do better and to fix the things they've screwed up, and an opportunity to put good into the world so they can add to their pile of good to try to make up for some of the things in their pile of bad. That's who I'm always going to be. That's the way I wish the world was. But it certainly isn't that way anymore, no matter how much I've begged over the last decade on this YouTube channel to try to encourage people to be that way. So as usual, I'm really curious as to what you guys think. What do you think about James Gunn's tweets? Do you think it's forgivable because it's so far in the past? Or do you think it's unforgivable now? Do you think he made up for the damage that he may have done? Or do you think he didn't do any damage? Do you think shock humor is okay? Do you think it was okay then and it's not okay now? Do the world has changed? Do you like the world we've created? I'm really looking forward to the discussion about this in the comments section below. And it's going to be tough to read because I know people are going to be very, very critical of me there. As you probably should be. I definitely have skeletons in my closet. I've definitely made a lot of mistakes. And eventually it will be my turn to have my head on the chopping block, just like James Gunn. Lord knows in the last year I've already lost a couple of sponsors and a couple of brand deals and stuff like that because I've said and done some stupid stuff. It'll continue to happen, and eventually the world will turn on me the way they did James Gunn today, I guess. But until then, I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say in the comment section. But I do want to issue a challenge to you. I've lamented my skeletons of the closet in this video, but do you have skeletons in your closet? If you reached my level of YouTube notoriety, or you reached James Gunn's level of notoriety, are there things that you have said and done in the past 10, 15, 20 years that would ruin you, that would ruin your career, that would pull you apart, that would make people second guess you or hate you or attack you? If you are somebody who can say, no, there's no skeletons in my closet, there's nothing I regret, there's nothing I've ever done, know that you're the exception and not the rule. And I would love to get to know you. I would love to meet you. You would make a great friend. You probably wouldn't like me very much because I screw up all the time, but so do most of us, and I bet most of your friends have too. Still though, even the worst joke I've made in the last 10 years, and I've made some really gross, disgusting jokes, I still don't think any of them really compare to what he was saying on Twitter. Truly, truly offensive stuff. Even in context, it's still pretty offensive. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. I love you very much, and I'll speak with you again soon.